future with dignity, we must make the wealthy pay their fair share.
That sounds fair to me. In fact, it's all part of humans finding our fit. What do you know? It is time for finding our fit. What we mean by that, folks, is you get to Earth, with no manual. You just get dropped off. You have to figure out what's going on. When you finally figure out how to be useful, then it's our job to find our fit. And us old folks, speaking for myself, us old folks have been around long enough to figure out what the manual says, or part of it anyway, and we're trying to be useful. So finding our fit is those little components that go to making life work for all of us. So we'll have something to pass on. And my gosh, that's my cue to turn this whole thing over to Susanna. Can you hear me, Susanna?
I can hear you, Ron, and thank you for being so useful to our community here with your radio station so that we can all enjoy your platform. Thank you so much.
Well, you're very welcome. This is my swan song. This is what I love to do. I want to go out singing the songs of world that works.
Well, we're going to have you sing sometime, Ron.
Right.
Maybe not today.
Not today. No plans. No immediate plans. All right. I'm going to give the floor to you, Susanna. Take it away.
Okay, thanks again, Ron, and thank you everyone for dialing in to Finding Our Fit. I'm Susanna Wupong Calvert, and the purpose of our show is to help us find our place in our crazy but beautiful world. And in so doing, we will enrich our world and create a brighter future for everyone and everything, including Earth. I'm also the founder and executive director of the Foundation for Family and Community Healing, whose mission is to also help everyone find our fit through mental, emotional, and relationship resilience skill education. Check us out after the show and find your fit with us at healingedu.org. We do this program to help us make sense of our beautiful and crazy world so that we can choose the more beautiful side. Often we just focus on the crazy in our life, forgetting the flip side is where we can find and create opportunity, wisdom, and healing. In Finding Our Fit, we focus on learning, growth, and how to become wiser and more resilient by adopting a healthier relationship with ourselves and everybody and everything. It's important to remember to embrace both the yin and the yang, both the challenging and rewarding parts of life, to create balance and conditions for healing and wisdom. It's a practice that we have to choose every day. Today, we're focusing on the interface and interplay between yin and yang, the rewards and challenges. In other words, you have a challenge. How do you get to the other side where there's reward, learning, and growth? If we're lucky, we have access to the expertise, help, and support that we need to navigate accessing those rewards. But these days, having the money, time, and the right professional available to help feels increasingly rare. And there can be a lot at stake: our health, well-being, important relationships, financial security, and so on. And then there's the piece where we know that we have changes that we need to make, but don't quite know how to get there, especially if we don't have all of the resources. So that's why today's topic is so important and so generous, frankly, because with me today, I have a guest who's going to help us talk about how to coach yourself to create behavioral change. This topic and skill really is important to everyone, and including me, since while I'm good at creating behavioral change in many parts of my life, I have also been struggling with some basics since the pandemic related to diet and exercise. Furthermore, I'm going to confess that I'm feeling a bit discouraged because a close family member does everything right, exercises vigorously every day, and has pretty much a perfect diet, yet is still having concern about pre-diabetes. So why should I go those last 20 yards to make those needed changes? So here with us today to help me, and more important, all of you, to figure out how to coach yourself to create behavioral change, I am delighted to welcome Cynthia Moore, co-founder of Hygeia Wellness Park, board certified health and wellness coach, registered dietitian, and diabetes educator, to Finding Our Fit. And hopefully she will help us figure this all out. So welcome to Finding Our Fit, Cynthia.
Hello and welcome. Thank you. Thank you for the welcome, and thank you for inviting me, Susanna. I'm delighted to be here.
It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, now,
can you hear me okay? Am I coming across okay?
I can hear you, but I'm echoing. I don't know if you can help out with that. I'll more and maybe. Cynthia, could you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I kind of came to this type of work because as a registered dietitian, even earlier, I won't tell you my whole life story, but I saw that there were things that we could do that made a big difference in our health. Saw that growing up in a parent, and it made a difference in her mental health. And then through helping to coach people around nutrition change and blood sugar change, I saw A, it was possible, and B, there are things that we can do both in the realm of how we think and in the area of behavior change, but just that it's powerful, it's doable. And so when the field of health coaching came along, I was delighted to find there was a whole repository of how to do these things that we want to do in terms of shifting and changing. And so what else do I need to say? Just the Hygeia Wellness Park is a place where there are resources that you can tap. Also, I mean, there are existing resources and YouTube kinds of things on there, but also we hope to eventually have classes in all the areas of self-health care. And today we'll be talking about some of the things that you can do that follow the same process that you'd be in if you were being coached by an external coach, health coach.
Well, that's wonderful. It's so incredible for us that you're sharing with us today, and also resource for us to do better on our own. Can you hear me? The echo?
I'm hearing you, and then there's like a little pause after almost each sentence somehow, like a little delay.
Okay. I'll try to just echo then. So tell us more about wellness, Cynthia. What is that? How can it do? How does it work?
Yeah. So health coaching in general is it's a relatively new field, and self-health coaching, which is what we'll be talking about today, is a low-cost way that you can access health coaching yourself. It's health coaching when you have an external coach is generally partnering with that health coach, or it could be a significant other, to accomplish either goals that you're aiming for or speed up your progress. And a coach brings some tools and skills, and you really bring the wisdom. Whether you have an external coach or whether you're going to be coaching yourself, you're the font of wisdom. And the idea is the coach is bringing skills of listening and reflection that help you tap, sort of almost like a mirror shining into the parts that know inside of you, help you tap those places where, and hear yourself, what your own wisdom is about that process. They bring some tools, and we'll go into those tools, and you'll have the opportunity to do one of them today. When you are coaching yourself, you need to also bring that kind, non-judgmental, patient presence, whether it's through journaling or it's through just setting a weekly appointment with yourself so that you can do these same steps we'll talk about for your own benefit. Because it turns out, and or could be a significant other that does those, because it turns out that caring other, whether it's you or another person or a coach that you're paying, that caring other is really part of the magic of what makes the difference. So we know you can access that through journaling and through reflective listening yourself, but that piece is an important piece.
That's great. And I just am a fan of coaching. I'm a coach myself in many areas, and what I have found to be so beautiful about it, as you mentioned, that people have their own wisdom and access it with the help of a coach, as opposed to having to always pay for an expert to tell them something that may not work out for them in terms of what will work for them with their behavioral state.
Yes, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Oh, just absolutely. Yeah.
And this topic of health and wellness is so important. I don't know if you have any data or describes your impression of what health and wellness of Americans is like now compared to years ago, pre-pandemic. Are we generally moving in the right direction, or are we getting less healthier or knowledge on that?
I think many of us are aware that, it's now going from 1 out of 2 or 3, depending on which state you live in, but 1 out of 2 or 3 of us who are obese, 1 out of 4 or 5 of us to have a mental health challenge. Anxiety is 1 out of 4 people, and depression's 1 out of 5. And when you add economic challenge like we had during COVID, that upped the ante, and even things like food stamps and all of those things that are there to support us, the use went up because we know, there was just adding economic challenge in the midst, and isolation in the midst of it didn't help. But right now we're kind of sitting on an epidemic. You mentioned diabetes in the family, or or the concern you had about a family member. And it used to be, we'd think of type 2 diabetes, for example, as something that people developed in the middle age or beyond. And when I lived in West Virginia, it was like 1 out of 4 people over age 65 having diabetes. That was about 30 years ago or whatever. It's significantly increased now to the challenge of people can be in a pre-diabetes state for about 10 years before diabetes shows up. And if they make change then, terrific, they can turn it around. But we're knowing the largest, fastest growing group of people who are moving into that pre-diabetes and then diabetes age are more like young adults. So the challenge is happening sooner, and with any chronic condition, whether it's mind or body, the sooner we turn it around, really, the hopefully better it is, and the less we need to actually shift or change in order to get results.
Yes, and this is so even more important that listeners hearing you now, getting your advice to make some really important changes that could affect the trajectory of their health and wellness for decades to come.
Yeah, that's the exciting thing about small shifts, whether I have the hat on as a dietitian or a diabetes educator, or what I found mostly and quite frankly is that if I approach things as a health and wellness coach, regardless of whether I'm sitting in my dietitian's office or whether I'm saying I'm calling myself a health coach, really trusting that once we tap into what it is the individual really wants, or they tap into it for themselves, and get clear about why that matters, the path is often faster and cleaner and to shifting. And we know certainly that many of those conditions can be easily shifted if we start early enough, and having that kind of part of the beauty of health and wellness coaching is it draws on what we know about positive psychology and a growth mindset, and looks at health and illness as kind of more of a continuum. One of the theorists I really love, Dr. John Travis, who wrote the Wellness Workbook, on the one hand, maybe premature illness, health in the middle, and then optimal vitality on the other, that even though when we take health risk assessments and things, we're often working between health and the premature disease kind of end of things, but that at any point, no matter where we are, if we kind of shift our focus over here to what we want for our well-being, we activate things that assist us in getting there. We're more likely to engage hope and possibility in our own lives, and that can help take us in that direction for change.
And that's more tangible than just don't do this, do that, less of this. Right.
Oh, yeah.
So it gives us something tangible to work toward.
Yes, absolutely.
So this is WR K 93.9 FM. Finding it. I'm Susanna Calvert, here with Cynthia Moore, co-founder of Hygeia Wellness Park, board certified health and wellness coach, registered dietitian and diabetes educator, talking about how to coach yourself to create behavioral change. So we'd love to hear from your listeners. If you have questions or stories or comments, give us a call at 804-464-1089. Or if you're on Facebook, then pop something in the chat. I'd love to hear from you. So tell us a bit more about making changes in our lifestyle and why it is so hard for us. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Probably most of us here know a little bit about why it's hard, right? We have these things that we would say are important to us, our kind of key values that matter. I work some with the people who I get to both teach and work a bit around people who are in the VA or veterans or people caring for veterans. And, so often their values might be faith, God, family, or something very discrete like that. And those can be what we say our values are. And yet we also have, those are our ideal, let's say, values, but we also have these operational values that might be around, play and fun and ease. And so, we might value our health, and that can be a value that we speak about, and even preventive health and those kind of things. And yet, if we also ask ourselves, have I done something in the last 24 hours that got in the way of that value? Most of us have, right? So we have these different kinds of values, and we're not always operating on our ideal. That's one. And two, habit change involves parts of the brain, the part that learns new things, that prefrontal cortex, takes a good bit of energy. So after the brain has had us think, or we've done various behaviors enough, it converts it to a part of the brain where it's more efficient for the brain, the habit center. And once it's there, all that we have to have is the cue, the trigger, whatever that might be. And most of us who've tried to switch something, be it cigarette smoking or late night eating or any of those, we know, once you hit the cue, it typically goes into a behavior, and then we get a reward of some kind. And studies show the brain starts feeling, when we even think about it or engage with the trigger, the brain starts firing the reward. So it's actually trained to go and do the thing. And so interfering with that, changing that up, is not an easy project.
Okay. And so what types of things get in it and break that cycle?
Yeah. So one way, and I guess maybe I'll get here into kind of the how we go about it with health coaching, and how I would suggest you go about it as your own health coach. It's important to get clear on what it is you do want. Most of us are clear what we don't want, but getting clear on what actually is it that I do want. What's my destination? If I could set my brain's GPS for where I want to be on, let's say, building upper body strength, since that's something that's coming up for me. What exactly is it I want to be doing with that? And when it's done, how will that be? So I might start with vision, and I can say more about the mechanics of that in a minute. But then kind of assess, where am I compared to that? So in a health coach setting, we take a kind of a self-assessment. And I think we're going to drop that in the chat today. So you could be doing it either while we chat or afterwards. It's a nice thing to give yourself 10 or 30 minutes to do that self-assessment. But that self-assessment often helps us kind of see, where am I on a variety of things that are related to health. My concern for the planet, my concern for my eating, moving, my relationships, my financial well-being, all those elements of health and well-being. And then out of that, we kind of pick a focus, an area to say, yeah, it is really moving the body that matters to me. But now that I've taken that self-assessment, I see how I eat matters, how much sleep I'm getting, all those things sort of factor into whether or not I get to doing what I think I need to do to move the body. And we move from there into setting a 2 or 1 to 3 month goal, and then some action steps. So how do we get around it? We don't try and do it in one fell swoop. We do it one small action step at a time. But by having linked up with what matters to us and what we want, we find often different levels of both motivation and creativity for how to do the small action steps that are really going to help us build another trajectory, both in our brain and our muscle memory, as it were.
Okay, so I know you're going to talk about that in there later, and that's a great overview, and I see that gone to the chat. But can you also talk more about how we create change? Like there's a process for creating change, and what other role concepts can you talk about that's related to the change process?
Yeah. So I know when you and I talked, we did a little brainstorming about what we'd talk about today. And one of the things I thought of then is there are some theorists, including a guy that talks about 2 guys that came up with this thing that's called stages of change. And to me, that process, I'm not sure if that's the kind of thing you're thinking about. And I know you know about a lot of these things too. So feel free to steer me if I'm not going where you think might be useful to your listeners. But the stages of change theory would say that it's kind of comforting, because it would say we're all already in a stage of change. Let's say me with getting more upper body strength training. Let's say that's my current aim at the moment. It can be not even on my radar. We'd give it a name like pre-contemplation. It can be on my radar, but I'm not ready to make change. That has another name, contemplation. And then there's a whole phase I would call, and they call, planning. And in that phase, we try on a bunch of things. We might even set little mini learning goals, but those kinds of things help set us up for success. And even if we're trying to extinguish a behavior like smoking or whatever, the planning phase is still also very important. And we might spend kind of a lot of time there, or you might, as you're working, coaching yourself. And these can be where things you may have seen in the general media, like Martha Beck with her 4 minutes, 4 days kind of practices, practicing some small thing for short amounts of time gives the brain a new kind of sense of possibility. And if we're kind and we show up for ourselves with empathy and without judgment, it's likely that we will be able to stay the course enough for some of those small action steps to fit together. And eventually then we get ready to kind of be in a phase that the stage of change people would call in a phase of action, where we're doing it consistently, like for a month. And then by the time we're in the next phase, it's called maintenance. We've been doing it for about 6 months. There's also a phase called relapse and recycle, which is just comforting to know that it's normal and often happens that we fall off the wagon, as it were. And the good news is we can come back to any of those other places in the meantime. So the mindset matters. Something Carol Dweck, this person who came up with the growth mindset, the idea that instead of staying with what's safe and what's known, we're willing to kind of say, I haven't succeeded yet, or I've tried various things, but I haven't succeeded yet, or even I'll fail forward in a sense. And that pattern, that mindset turns out to be helpful.
Fantastic. So we are WR WA 93.9 FM. I'm Susanna Calvert here with Cynthia Moore, co-founder of Hygeia Wellness Park, board-certified health and wellness coach, registered dietitian, and diabetes educator, discussing how to coach yourself to create behavioral change. We would love to hear from your listeners. If you have thoughts, questions, or concerns for Cynthia, give us a call at 804-464-1089 or put something in the chat on Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. Well, I certainly can attest to doing things for a few minutes because I have talked myself into doing things that I hate for just a few minutes at a time, and then all of a sudden I find that an hour or two has gone by, and I've gotten all this work done, and it can really work. So I thank you for that reminder.
Well, it's nice that you're able to tap into that strength that you have. What would you call that quality in you that persevere? I would call it perseverance, but what would you call it?
I'd call it perseverance.
Okay.
My mom used to call it stubbornness. Two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah. And also a willingness to try on something, even though it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So
you're inspiring me anew with these health habits.
Well, and the good news is it's important. Like if I was externally coaching, I would be drawing out those strengths. That's something that if we're self-coaching, we also need to pause and notice, gee, I really did this well, or I've used this skill in the past, and noticing those, bringing it over into this new project is part of what an external coach does. So if we're going to play both roles in a sense, finding ways to kind of pause and acknowledge what the strengths are that we're bringing forward is usually a helpful step.
Well, another great reason to work with a coach because it's so self-affirming in a way that's authentic to us. And thank you for the strengths shout out. Yeah, appreciate it. Okay, so can you talk more about why self-coaching for health and wellness really matters, right? You mentioned a little bit about statistics, but what happens to people if they don't take charge of their habits and their awareness about making change and creating better life themselves?
Yeah, so we're in an environment that is more chronic stress environment. So our wiring is that we have energy output. We have this nervous system that can go and do and all those things. And then we're wired to also have a rest and renewal kind of piece where our parasympathetic nervous system sets in. So we're wired to be able to do both. And people who are really healthy apparently can do both pretty fast, right? Jimmy Connors on the tennis court could do, between hits of the racket, he could do a whole cycle kind of thing. In our current world, we go a lot in the go, and then we go to the next go, and we're not doing this rest and renewal piece all that well. During COVID, some of us did a lot of rest and renewal, and we were kind of down on this ebb. We weren't getting the top ebb. So having both is helpful. And that's kind of a tangent, but chronic stress is really a killer. And we know from the work of Bruce McEwen up at Rockefeller University, I think is where he was, that no matter what our genes are, and genes do affect our capacity for change and our stress level and all of that, but no matter what our genes are, no matter what our environment is, no matter how much various things, support or trauma or what have you, we have. If we have chronic stress, it adds to the challenge. It makes it more likely that instead of being in that growth mindset or willing to try newer things, we're, it's a wear and tear kind of an environment. So we live in a wear and tear environment. Therefore, we kind of have to step up. And, the media adds wear and tear. Certain events in the world around us can add that, even air pollution, all of those kinds of things. And so doing what we can to maximize our inner environment is important, because there's going to be contagion either way, either negative contagion of stress and worry, as we're seeing in young people right now, many of whom, had accelerated rates of stress and challenge during COVID, with changes in school and university and all those things. And there can also be the opposite, which is kind of our aim at the Hygeia Wellness Park, to enhance individual health and well-being and allow people to thrive individually, recognizing that adds to the positive contagion with their family members, their coworkers, their community, possibly the companies they work with even. So it's kind of essential that we step up and have a plan for ourselves, whether it's how we practice mind-body skills, which is an important piece of kind of health coaching as well, because it helps us be in the brain state where we can take in new guidance from ourselves. Or whether it's the kinds of things we're putting in the body, how we're moving the body, but working with those instead of being more of a passive consumer is kind of critical. As mentioned, the mental health statistics and physical health, we're in a diabetes epidemic, and the statistics are pretty grim, given that we know 1 out of 2 or 3 of us is already in that pre-diabetes stage, and 10 years later is when diabetes develops. And with mental health, the statistics are, it's impossible for the number of therapists to work one-on-one with the number of people having mental health challenges right now. So it's unsustainable, as my co-founder colleagues, Anna and Mary, would say. It's absolutely unsustainable to be able to meet the demands within the profession of therapists and psychologists, psychiatrists. People matter, and we know that it's possible to flourish. There's a whole field of not just getting out of the woods in terms of mental health, but actually this whole -10 to baseline. There's a whole field that some of your listeners have probably tapped into with people like his name's going to leave me right now, but anyway, from baseline to +10, Rick Hansen, and some of his work and videos and things like that, but just teaching us what positive psychology has to share, that there are ways to flourish. And so bringing all of our elements of health up a bit, or getting some of them to work together so that we handle the foundations, the eating and moving, sleep and stress a little better, helps us to then flourish in some of the other areas of relationship and building wealth and those kinds of things that can also be additive for health.
I love that with Cynthia, because we tend to think about these negative problems, challenges in a vacuum, but when they really can become themselves and compound problems, not only for us, but for others. But the reverse is also true, right? That the positive things can build upon themselves for us and for others. And being able to reverse that cycle so that it's an upward spiral to the positive, to the flourishing, can be so transformative.
Transformative, indeed. Yeah. Yeah, transformation and flourishing. That's what we would love to have each individual be able to do for themselves, more and more.
Yes, that's what a great goal
is.
I'm trying my
I'm trying my
earbuds
and I'm still
the
hearing
echo.
the echo.
Oh, I'm so your level. One thing we could think about is I don't know. I'm just feeling for you the stress of ramped up having to hear that double echo for this amount of time. That's tough.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Ron
and
says
Ron
he can
says
hear
he
it
can hear
too.
it too.
So I fear it's for everybody out there.
Oh dear.
I think what I might do is encourage you to talk as you would wish for the rest of the show, and I'll chime in. But I think the less I talk, the better.
Okay.
That might be generally true, but especially true tonight.
Okay.
So
Wow.
I'd love to hear you talk more about why it matters and how to do it over the next 25 minutes.
Okay. I will do that. Is there any?
Ron is suggesting I call in, so maybe I'll do that.
Okay. Yeah, it's good to have your input. So that sounds great. Okay, so maybe I'll switch to kind of how to do it, how to coach yourself, and I hope that serves everyone. Rick, if it's possible, perhaps you've already done this, but you could go ahead and put that self-assessment in the chat. It's a form that people could link onto and save if you wish. So even before we get there, it's often helpful to consider the qualities of mindfulness and take just a breath or two, and maybe we'll do that together, to bring all parts of the brain on to this project of how we're going to coach ourselves. Because the thinking brain, the feeling brain, and the brainstem sometimes work together and sometimes don't, and we can access the wisest part of ourselves when they are working together. So I would just invite you, for reader or listeners, and anybody that might be with us on Facebook Live, to just maybe sit tall or stand tall if you're standing. Take a couple of nourishing breaths, perhaps allowing a slightly deeper in-breath. And a nice, long, slow exhale or out-breath. And just one more like that, settling into the breath. Can be done eyes open or closed. And then inviting your body to make the small but important shifts that bring you into a body state of balance, which might be stretching or moving something, might be tensing or relaxing different body parts. For me, it's often bringing the shoulders together or in front of me and then expanding them as though they could meet behind me, gently bringing them up towards the ears, maybe on another inhale, and gently pressing them down. And just bringing the body into a body state of balance, and then just quietly for another breath or two, kindly observing yourself, almost like a good friend would if they just kind of came in and they were there with you, perhaps kindly observing your thoughts, although they might be mind readers or might not. Kindly observing, in this case, it's you observing your own, kindly observing your feelings that might be arising. Angry, sad, afraid, grateful, happy, secure, whatever they might be. And then observing any body sensations, but just taking a moment to kind of kindly observe. And then returning to the breath and to the room. If your eyes were closed, you might open them and just do a little stretch. And we'll go ahead and start. So step one, for how to coach yourself, you'll want to develop a what you could call a wellness vision. Some people you may have known, or you may have in the past done a vision board. It could be something that starts a document that you just take a paragraph and jot down. I'm so happy now that this is where you want to be. This is setting your North Star. This is finding out what does that look like, feel like, sound like, best you can. So it's developing a wellness vision for yourself. And I might just give you a minute here to actually jot down some things that will go in your wellness vision, because most of us have one. So you might just take a moment to settle into the breath and just to ask yourself, what really matters to me right now? Jot those things down. It might be a felt state in the body. There might be anything from a color to a known something that comes to mind, but what really matters to me? And maybe what brings me joy? Possibly even a moment that I felt in joy recently. You might bring that to mind. All those can be helpful to accessing what matters to me and what do I want my health for, things that kind of go into that wellness vision. So just keep quiet for a minute, jotting things down for yourself. If there's something that you know is kind of important to your well-being vision, you might just picture that. Picture yourself doing that in your mind's eye. Take a moment, just mentally rehearse. Okay, for me, it might be being at the gym, actually doing some weightlifting, because I know that's part of my well-being vision, that I can do that as easily as I take my walk most days. But give yourself a moment to kind of mentally rehearse that, be in that space with it. For Susanna, who mentioned that, there were certain ways of eating and things that kind of used to be part of her life that weren't there, she might be visualizing herself, in that space where those are simpler to do and they feel better and they're more gratifying. So whatever that is for you, you will first want to develop a well-being vision. That's step one. Step two would be to kind of do a little mini assessment. That form that hopefully will be in the chat that you can access. It's a way of asking yourself in a variety of areas of health, what matters to me now, in the area of, let's say, eating and moving and recharge, or could be other areas of well-being like financial well-being or weight wellness or relationships. And the form will walk you through that, where you can kind of say on a 1 to 10 or a 0 to 10 scale, where 0 is not I'm not very far in that area, not where I want to be, to 10, I am where I want to be, or maybe 7 is where you want to be. But just you get to rate yourself, where am I now versus where would I like to be? And then a further question can be, what would it take? If I'm at a 5 with moving the body, let's say, and I want to be at a 8, I can ask myself, well, what would have to happen to get to that 8? And there's a place on the form that you could actually, you don't need to have the form, you could just make your own. These are the 8 areas of health that matter to me. And I can just kind of do a self-assessment of, where am I now with each of those 8, and where would I like to be? Something about the numbers is often helpful. And then step 3, we decide on, or you decide for yourself on, what's an area I'm going to focus on. So it might be the area you came in with and was part of your well-being vision. Like for me, I'm happily moving the body in various four different areas of health. 4 different avenues for well-being or movement on a more regular basis. It might be that you choose that area of moving the body, but it also might be that, gosh, you've realized how important relationships are to you by doing the mini assessment. So I'm just going to pause here and see if Susanna's back with us in audio, and if that's making sense so far. I'm not hearing you at all. So I'm not hearing you. I can see you, but I can't hear you. Still can't hear you. So we'll presume you're coming back in a way that you can talk before the end of the show, and I'll keep going. So about you as reader or as listeners could let me know if you have questions so far. So we've got step 1, we set a wellness vision. Step 2, you kind of assess, and part of that wellness vision is what matters to you, what your vision and your values for yourself are, and your well-being state, the state of wellness that you want for yourself, this stage of your life. And then step 2 is you're doing a self-assessment of where am I in a variety of areas of health and where do I want to be. Step 3, you pick a focus. One of those areas is going to be your focus. And you set a 1 to 3 month goal. Like for me, if when I did a self-assessment, I put exercising was at a 5, but I'd like to be an 8. I'd like to be sitting less, moving more, building muscles. So my area of focus, if I choose the area of moving the body and I set a 2-month goal, it would be in 2 months, by November 10th, I'll be going to the gym twice a week or 8 times a month to do an upper body strength training workout for at least 20 minutes a visit. So that would be where I want to go 2 months from now. That would be my long-term goal. So you might take a minute and just, I can hear something in the background.
Ron asked me to try it again.
Good. Okay.
It's still echoey.
It's
okay.
How is it, Ron?
I can't tell how annoying it is for others. It seems a little bit better on my end.
Good.
I don't know if Ron can weigh in. So why don't you continue what you were saying, and hopefully Ron can tell whether I should stay silent or not.
Okay. All right. So we've got those first kind of 3 steps. And then once we've got that long-term goal and we've made it a smart long-term goal, meaning you could choose whatever time you want, whether it's a 1 month or 2 month or 3 month. But making it smart, meaning it's specific. You'll know when you got there. It's measurable. You know, you have ways to tell did you or did you not get there. And then it's action oriented. So it's a behavior. It's not an outcome like certain number of pounds lost on a scale. There's too many variables that go into that. But the behaviors that might feed into that, like I'm getting 5 fruits or vegetables a day. I'm moving my body 30 minutes most days by walking. Whatever are the behaviors, those could be part of your, those could be part of the long-term goal. So it's specific, it's measurable, it's action-oriented, it's realistic in your real life. One of the things I loved when somebody taught me this was, so that sounds pretty good. That sounds though like it might be in your ideal day. What about a real day in your life? And so each of us could ask ourselves that question, in my real life, is this realistic that I would do whatever it is? And then target dated or timed. And sometimes the T in SMART can also stand for tracking. But so we make the long-term goal, we make it SMART, and then we set a this week action step. And the action step is usually whatever we need to do first. So for me, like with the 2-month goal that you just heard from me, one of the first steps was decide where I might go in a gym I would like to go to and would go to because it feels okay to me to go to. I need to do a little research. So my first step might be a research one of visit 2 gyms and decide if it feels right and the cost is doable for me. And so that would be let's say that was actually my last week action step. And I did go and I found a gym and I have since joined it. So then I can go on to the next action step, because often we expect ourselves to go from where I am and my wanting to the 2-month goal, in one fell swoop. So the SMART action step allows us to then do the next step, which is really an important one. And that's the one you'll do for the majority of time you're coaching yourself. Let's say you take 9 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever your time period is going to be. You'll meet with yourself once a week and you'll ask these 3 questions. What went well? What didn't go according to plan? And the third question, what did I learn? And here's where you really have to show up for yourself. What went well? often we want to skip over that and go to what didn't go well, what I didn't do, right? So we want to have a little discipline on the what went well and what didn't go well. And again, we're bringing that mindful, non-judgmental, kind, patient kind of quality to ourselves, like an external coach would hopefully bring. And then third, what did I learn? So, what I learned from myself, for example, in this last week was, I'm just not going to go to a gym where there's just a lot of guys and not any women. I need to feel comfortable there. And I kind of knew that before, but I reinforced that learning and made it really clear it has to feel right to me. And so still haven't been once to a gym, haven't lifted any weights, haven't used any equipment, but I'm making progress on my goal, because by asking myself what went well, what didn't, and what did I learn, I'm learning from that. If I would then do that next step that Susanna and I did together over what strengths could I bring to this, or what support do I need, I might be able to actually bolster my way to the next action step even better. And then it's rinse and repeat, but it does require you to show up for yourself, almost like it was a date night with a partner. I need to have that date night with myself and show up and ask those, what went well, what didn't go so well, and what did I learn, and show up in a kind way for ourselves. And a journal could also stand in for that, and could be a way to actually ask the questions and then trust your inner wisdom to kind of share on the page what you find. So hopefully when all that goes well, we encounter some barriers. We encounter what's not working well. And there are strategies for overcoming barriers. And one of the things I'll just say that was a good learning moment for me was when somebody in coach training named what I'd encountered as a dietitian and diabetes educator, that there are inner barriers. It's not just external barriers like time and weather. The internal barriers are definite, significant. And the cool thing is there are strategies for working with some of those. And also that there are interpersonal barriers, things that we don't do because of maybe other people in the family or what have you. So working those barriers with ourselves is the other thing we do for those 9 or 12 weeks. We notice what didn't work. We keep going. What did I learn? And then we come back to, is there a strategy I could use here? Because gosh, I'm dealing with this inner barrier and I'm aware of it. And then hopefully we celebrate our wins and get one area that we aimed for, even if we didn't make it exactly to, if I'm not working out 8 times 2 months from now, 8 times for 20 minutes, I'm going to count it as a win, I suspect, if I get there 5 times or 6 times, because I'm still in the process of making change.
That's
great.
great. I'm gonna
hazard a question.
So do you go through the same process with the inner and interpersonal barriers, or do you have separate strategies for that?
So there are some separate strategies for the inner ones. Some that have, kind of fun names, and most of us have done a version of them. Brainstorming can be a way to just, if we non-judgmentally let ourselves generate 6 or 8 ideas, even wacky ones, and we don't edit them, and then afterwards we agree with ourselves we're going to adopt one of them. That's one possibility. Another is a shift of perspective. And I remember when a coach that was coaching me first said, perspectives, like, what would the perspective of your cat be? Or what would the perspective of, the childhood part of you, or of the elder of you? What perspective would they have? Perspective shifting can be really useful. And then another one that most of us recognize, we hear more from our inner critic than we do our nurturing inner voice. And so making tea with the gremlins is the name for one that we can do when we notice, oh yeah, there's that critical part. It's back again. Well, let me just sit down here with it and see what I can do to get to know it a little bit, find out where it got its start and what it needs, kind kind of opening to it rather than trying to hold it out here like it was dirty laundry.
And
what about the interpersonal barriers? What strategies do you recommend?
I would say varying certain styles of communication. There's one that we use in another training I offer, but it's called a Nourishing Resilience Sandwich. And it's basically making requests that are kind of set up for success, because sometimes it's boundaries that we, boundary practices that we have with others that need to get enacted. But a way of making a request using the sandwich method would be, I would be making a statement of honest empathy, like I care that, or I understand that, or I can appreciate that. But then I feel, in your own feeling, I need, and would you please, and then coming back to more bread on the bottom of, and I can appreciate that given your XYZ, that would be hard for you. And I appreciate that you're willing to consider it. But the I feel, I need, and would you please, most of us aren't very good at the I feel. We're good at I feel that you, but we're not very good at I feel angry, or I feel upset, or I feel afraid. And there's some magic in actually naming one's own feeling there, and then being succinct about what it is we need and what the request is.
That's beautiful.
I love that.
So we just have 4 minutes, Cynthia, and I'm going to refrain from summarizing. But I'd like to give you the last 4 minutes to tell the listeners any summaries, contact information that you would like to share with them.
Well, I would just invite you to show up for yourself and to recognize your own innate highest wisdom is often just tiny bit below the surface. And so by bringing a sense of warmth and compassion that you have for other people to yourself, and a little bit of time and pausing and not multitasking, it's amazing what kinds of goodies you can find within. So there's that. To briefly summarize in terms of how to coach yourself, it would be to clarify, and this might take even a week or 2 or 3, but to clarify, what do you want? What is it you really want? What do you feel passionate about? And that if you can, to set an image for what matters to you, that's either a body felt sense, pictures that you kind of put in a composite place, but something you can feel pretty passionately about that, because you'll pick up lots of energy that way. If there are things that in your journey you find, and so that might be a big win right there. If you'd like to have some external coaching, we offer that through the Hygeia Wellness Park. And there's a couple of others of us that are coming on board they're better at coaching even than I am. I'm learning from them. But if you want an external coach, we're happy to help you with that. We also have a course on how to coach yourself that we hope to run in the fall. And it's partly online and partly short, small group experiential. And just that in general, the Hygeia Wellness Park is an open project, similar to the foundation that Susanna has, with the idea being that it's really time here on planet Earth for us to come together and bring the best of healthful self-care together in a place that more people can access it. So if that vision resonates for you and you have things that you'd like to share with us, we'd love to know what those things are. We're always looking for good faculty and ideas, and recognize this is a group project. So our website is www.hygeia.com, and Hygeia is spelled Hygeia, and then Wellness Park. So would love to have you visit and help us co-create this thing we are ready to have here as a resource for others.
I'm so incredibly excited by what you do and your values and mission and way of being. and so much
and so much
generosity
generosity
for
for
community. Thank you,
Thank you,
Cynthia.
Cynthia.
Thank you
Well,
for
you
your
know a lot
patience
about
and
that.
the echo, listeners and everybody.
Yeah. Thank you for your
Please do
generosity.
check out her
Check out her
resource.
resource.
Thanks.
Back to you,
Back to you,
Ron.
Ron.
Hey, that was an exciting show. We had two, Susanna. So we just anyway, we'll figure that out. But Cynthia, I want to tell you, I love the what I consider DIY therapy sort of thing. I thought to make a spot of that to say, you're just hoping you can make your day a little better. Try this.
Ron, I wonder if you could say that a tiny bit louder. I'm not hearing it very loudly. Can I turn up my volume and hear it better, or
Maybe, I don't know. I
don't know. I will turn my volume up.
Okay. Anyway, I'd love it if you. Now I'm getting that echo again. The process you mentioned, close your eyes, relax, take some breaths. I'll go through these steps into sort of a spot, a room, because I think everybody could use it occasionally during the day.
Yes.
Especially after a pretty jostling, like play democracy now, everything that we've done today, and they play that out. Oh, maybe before bed or not something like that. Anyway, but I loved it. And, I'm sorry it was just a little bit imperfect, but it wasn't us. Just it was straight,
Yeah.
As always.
Well, thank you for hosting the show so we could all be together, whoever was all here.
It's been great. Thanks for getting me to do this again. It was delightful. We'll start the details later. I'm not sure why echoes are think of the day. It's just September echoes day. Even me, I feel I'm echoing. That makes you nervous. So without, and if moving along, thank you very much. I'm going to move us from this show to the next one. Thank you very much. I'll continue playing my fit during the week as suggested.
Okay.
All right.
Bye for now.